So imagine you're going to a dermatologist, right? You're just hoping to um, smooth out a few stubborn forehead wrinkles.
Right, just a standard cosmetic appointment.
Exactly. Get a
Yep.
few standard injections, you go home, and you wait for your brow to relax.
Which it does.
Yeah, which it does.
Mm-hmm.
But then a few weeks later, you realize something else has happened. Something like completely impossible.
Oh, yeah.
A debilitating chronic neurological condition that has absolutely ruined your quality of life for decades has just, well, it's vanished.
It's wild to even think about.
It really is. So welcome, everyone. Today, for this deep dive, we are unpacking a really fascinating clinical resource document from the Migraine Surgery Specialty Center.
Yes, and we're tracing one of the most incredible, totally accidental discoveries in modern medicine.
We're going to explore how a purely cosmetic anti-wrinkle treatment fundamentally altered our entire understanding of chronic migraines and, how it now serves as a literal roadmap for permanent surgical relief.
I mean, it is a remarkable paradigm shift. We are taking a substance that the general public associates almost exclusively with aesthetics, dermatology and Beverly Hills plastic surgery.
Oh, for sure. When you hear Botox, you think Hollywood.
Exactly. But we're repositioning it as this foundational tool in complex neurology and pain management.
Which is such a massive leap.
It is. So we're going to look really closely at the underlying mechanisms, the clinical trials, and frankly, the severe limitations of this approach.
Right, because it's not perfect.
No, not at all. And ultimately, we'll look at the structural, anatomical solutions that this treatment points us toward.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. Because when you think of a migraine, if you or someone you love suffers from them, you usually think of them as these invisible, highly complex neurological storms.
Right, brewing deep inside the brain.
Yeah, exactly. They feel systemic, they feel chemical, like a brain chemistry issue.
That's the traditional view, yeah.
But the evidence we are exploring today suggests something entirely different for a massive portion of sufferers.
It really flips the script.
It does. It suggests that these migraines are actually caused by a simple, physical, anatomical problem.
Right. It's less like a mysterious chemical imbalance in the brain and more like, say, a pinched wire inside the wall of your house.
A pinched wire. I love that analogy.
Yeah, that pinched wire concept is really the core paradigm shift we're going to be dissecting today.
It makes so much sense when you visualize it.
It does. It's the shift from viewing chronic headache purely as a mysterious internal event to recognizing it, in many cases, as a mechanical structural issue, one that's occurring right on the periphery of the head and neck.
To really understand how this treatment changes our view of the nerve architecture of the head, we have to rewind a bit.
We do. We have to go back to the beginning.
Because this wasn't cooked up in some neurology lab by scientists looking for a headache cure. It was discovered by total, complete accident.
A total fluke.
So let's go back to the 1980s. You have botulinum toxin type A, which we all know commercially as Botox.
Right.
Now let's be real about what this actually is. It's a neurotoxin.
A very potent one.
Yeah. In fact, it is derived from the bacteria that causes botulism, which is, a type of severe food poisoning.
Exactly. And back then, it was not the household name it is today.
Not at all. People weren't throwing Botox parties in the 80s.
Definitely not. In the 1980s, the medical use of botulinum toxin was incredibly niche.
Like, what were they even using it for?
It was primarily being used by ophthalmologists for conditions involving severe involuntary muscle contractions.
Eye doctors.
Yeah, eye doctors. So the clinical logic was actually pretty simple. If a muscle is constantly contracting and causing a problem, you just inject a tiny, highly diluted amount of this toxin to temporarily paralyze that specific muscle.
Okay, so it was a highly specialized tool for neuromuscular spasms.
Exactly.
It certainly wasn't a headache drug.
No.
And it definitely wasn't a cosmetic drug yet.
Right. But then we move into the early 1990s.
The 90s, okay.
And we meet a dermatologist named Dr. William Binder.
Okay.
He is practicing in Beverly Hills, and he is one of the early pioneers using Botox for what would soon become, well, its most famous multi-billion-dollar application.
The cosmetic forehead wrinkle treatment?
Exactly. His patients just want to look a little younger, a little less stressed.
Sure. They want to freeze that specific muscle so the skin on top of it just smooths out.
That was the only goal.
But then the aha moment happens.
A big one.
these cosmetic patients start coming back to his clinic for their follow-up appointments.
Right.
And they were reporting a totally unexpected side effect.
It was bizarre.
The patients who happened to also suffer from chronic migraines were telling him, hey, my forehead looks great, but more importantly, my migraines are disappearing.
Yeah, they came in for wrinkles and they left without their chronic headaches.
It is such a massive unintended consequence. It's like trying to fix a leaky faucet in your kitchen and accidentally fixing the water pressure for the entire neighborhood.
That is a great way to put it.
But, I mean, how on earth do we go from a dermatologist just casually observing this in his cosmetic practice to rigorous standard of care science?
What's fascinating here is the trajectory of the clinical evolution that followed those early anecdotes.
Because you can't just run with a hunch.
Exactly. In medicine, you cannot just take an anecdotal observation, no matter how striking it is, and suddenly turn it into a standard of care. You need immense scrutiny.
Right, you need trials. You need data.
Lots of data. So Allergan, the manufacturer of Botox, they recognized the potential gold mine here.
I bet they did.
Yeah, and they began investing heavily in controlled research. Initially, in the mid to late 90s, they looked at episodic migraines.
Episodic migraines, meaning people who only get a few migraines a month.
Yes.
Maybe they get one when the weather changes or, during their menstrual cycle.
Correct. But the results in those episodic migraine trials were actually pretty mixed.
Really? It didn't work for them.
Well, the data was noisy, and the statistical benefit over placebo just wasn't clear enough.
Huh.
However, a massive, undeniable signal emerged when they looked at patients with chronic headache patterns.
The people who are suffering the absolute most.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This realization is what led to the landmark PREEMPT trials, which ran between 2005 and 2008.
Okay, let's pause and talk about these PREEMPT trials, because this is where the source material gets really specific.
It does.
PREEMPT stands for Phase 3 Research Evaluating Migraine Prophylaxis Therapy.
That's right.
And this wasn't some small local pilot study with 20 people.
No, not at all. We are talking about two massive, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies spanning multiple countries across North America and Europe.
Wow.
Yeah, they enrolled over 13,380 patients.
Over 1,000 people who were just desperate for any kind of relief.
Truly desperate.
And I want to emphasize what it means to be a participant in this specific trial. Because the FDA approval that came from it isn't just a blanket permission to use Botox for any random headache.
No, it is highly specific.
The indication they studied, and the one that ultimately got approved, is strictly for chronic migraine.
That is a critical distinction. Chronic has a very specific, strict definition in this medical context.
Right. What are the exact numbers on that?
It means the patient is experiencing 15 or more headache days a month for more than 3 months.
15 days. That's half a month.
At least. And on top of that, at least 8 of those days have to fulfill the strict clinical criteria for a full-blown migraine lasting 4 hours or longer.
Just think about that reality for a second.
It's grueling.
If you are experiencing 15 headache days a month, literally half of your life is spent in pain.
Half your life, yeah.
Half of your waking hours are completely compromised. You are missing your kids' birthdays, you are calling out sick from work, you are just sitting in dark, quiet rooms trying to survive the day.
It is a profound disability.
That is the threshold for this treatment. If you have, say, 12 headache days a month under these strict guidelines, using Botox is technically off-label.
Precisely. The approval, the clinical protocol, and the massive data set are built entirely around this severely burdened chronic population.
Yeah.
And because of the sheer weight of the data from the PREEMPT trials, which demonstrated statistically significant reductions in headache days and the use of acute rescue medications, the FDA took action.
They approved it.
They did. They officially granted approval to Botox for the prevention of chronic migraine on October 15th, 2010.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because going from a few injections for forehead wrinkles to treating a severe neurological condition is quite a leap.
It's a completely different scale.
It is. And when you actually look at the details in the source document regarding how a doctor is supposed to administer this, it is intense.
Very intense.
The PREEMPT protocol really reads like a shotgun approach.
Yeah.
You aren't just getting a little prick in your forehead.
Not at all. The PREEMPT protocol is a highly specific, standardized blueprint.
Walk us through the numbers.
We are talking about 155 units of Botox per treatment cycle.
Okay.
And that is distributed across 31 fixed injection sites on the head and neck.
31 sites?
Yes. And the protocol even allows the doctor to add up to 8 more follow-the-pain injection sites.
So bringing the total up to 40 individual injections in a single session.
Exactly. 40 injections.
40 injections with a neurotoxin every single time you go to the clinic.
Yes.
That is just, wow.
And it covers 7 distinct head and neck muscle groups.
Where are they putting all these?
Well, it starts in the frontalis and the forehead.
The wrinkle muscle.
Right. Then it moves to the corrugator and procerus muscles, which are between the brows and the bridge of the nose.
Okay.
Then the doctor moves to the side of the head, injecting the temporalis muscles at the temples.
The chewing muscles.
Yeah. Then to the back of the head, hitting the occipitalis at the base of the skull.
Wow, okay.
And finally, moving all the way down into the trapezius in the upper back and shoulders, and the cervical paraspinal muscles in the back of the neck.
Hold on, I have to play the skeptic here.
Please do.
If I'm a patient and my migraine is always, without fail, a stabbing pain right behind my left eye and into my left temple.
A very common presentation.
Right. Or, if we think back to Dr. Binder's cosmetic patients who just wanted their forehead wrinkles gone, they just got a few shots in the front.
Right.
Why on earth are we using this aggressive shotgun approach? Why is my doctor injecting a toxin into my neck, my spine, and my upper shoulders if the pain is strictly in my forehead?
It's a totally fair question.
It sounds incredibly aggressive. Are they just blasting the entire perimeter of the head and hoping something works?
It is a very common point of confusion and, frankly, a source of anxiety for patients who hear 40 injections.
I would be terrified.
They are used to the idea of cosmetic Botox, where you inject exactly and only where you want the muscle to stop moving.
Right.
But the PREEMPT protocol is fundamentally neurological, not cosmetic.
Okay.
It is designed to target the entire network of cranial and cervical muscle groups that are known to be involved in migraine generation and sensitization.
So it's systemic in a way.
Exactly. The clinical trial showed that this widespread, diffuse distribution was the most statistically effective way to downregulate the entire migraine network across a broad population.
So it is essentially a numbers game.
Very much so.
You are basically trying to quiet down the entire neighborhood of nerves just to make sure you catch the one specific house that is throwing the loud party.
That's a brilliant way to phrase it.
Yeah.
Yes, the protocol is standardized so that any doctor anywhere in the world can replicate the trial results.
Right. Consistency is key in trials.
But this transition, moving from the shotgun approach of paralyzing 7 different muscle groups to the actual mechanics of pain relief, leads us to a really crucial discussion about the mechanism of action.
Right. Because paralyzing a muscle in my neck doesn't immediately explain why a throbbing neurological storm inside my head goes away.
No, it's not intuitive.
Why does freezing a muscle stop a migraine?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the mechanism of action is where the story gets incredibly revealing.
I'm all ears.
Now, to be fair to the systemic neurological perspective, there is evidence that Botox directly desensitizes the trigeminal system.
The trigeminal system, that's the main pain pathway in the face and head, right?
Correct. The major nerve network. The theory is that the toxin might actually inhibit the release of certain pain-signaling neuropeptides from sensory nerve terminals.
Pain-signaling neuropeptides.
Yes. We are talking about chemicals like CGRP, substance P, and glutamate.
Wait, I want to make sure I understand this.
Right.
What do those chemicals actually do? Are they just like floating around in the brain?
Think of them as the chemical text messages that your nervous system uses to communicate.
Okay, text messages.
If a nerve is irritated, it releases CGRP and substance P to basically scream at the brain, "Ouch, we have tissue damage. Initiate the pain response."
So there are the alarm bells.
They are the alarm bells. And the initial thought was that Botox acts like a silencer on those alarm bells, stopping the chemical messages from being sent.
Okay, so it silences the chemical storm.
That was the idea.
That makes sense from a traditional pharmaceutical standpoint, but the source material we are looking at highlights a completely different primary action.
It does.
It's the most clinically meaningful mechanism here is actually something called chemical decompression.
And this brings us right back to the idea of a physical mechanical problem.
The pinched wire.
Exactly. Chemical decompression is a fascinating concept. To understand it, you have to picture the anatomy of the scalp, the face, and the neck.
Okay, picturing it.
The sensory nerves in these areas don't just float freely just beneath your skin. No. To get from your spinal cord or your brainstem out to the surface of your skin to feel things, they have to navigate a very complex, tight anatomical obstacle course.
They have to weave through the anatomy.
Exactly. They run through very narrow, tight anatomical corridors. They pass through dense muscles. They pierce through thick fascial bands.
Fascial bands.
Yeah.
You mean like fascia, the connective tissue? I always think of that tight, white, fibrous cling wrap you see on a raw chicken breast.
That is a perfect analogy. Now imagine what happens when the muscles surrounding these tight corridors are chronically tense.
They squeeze.
Exactly. Whether it is from chronic stress, poor posture, bruxism.
Bruxism is teeth grinding.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, severe teeth grinding that inflames the jaw and temple muscles, or maybe just a constant high baseline of muscle tension.
Okay.
When these muscles tense up, they physically, mechanically squeeze those peripheral nerves. They compress them against the fascia or the bone.
I'm visualizing a heavy garden stone sitting on top of a water hose.
Oh, that's good.
The hose is the nerve, the water flowing through it is the electrical signal to the brain, and the heavy stone is this tight, angry, compressed muscle.
Yes, that's exactly what's happening. And this constant physical irritation, it makes the nerve incredibly sensitive. Eventually, the nerve starts firing off those alarm bell chemicals.
This CGRP and substance P we talked about.
Right. It sends a barrage of pain signals to the brain. This mechanical irritation contributes heavily to the generation of the migraine headache.
So in this scenario, the Botox doesn't magically fix the water inside the hose.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't permanently rewire the brain's chemistry. What it does is temporarily lift the heavy stone off the hose.
Precisely. By paralyzing the muscle, it forces it to relax.
It takes that mechanical pressure off the nerve so it can function normally again.
Yes.
That is chemical decompression.
That is exactly what Dr. Binder was inadvertently doing to his cosmetic patients in the 90s.
Mind blown.
When he paralyzed their forehead muscles to stop the wrinkles, he was simultaneously relieving the compressive force on the nerves running through those muscles.
And when you look at it through this mechanical lens, this idea of lifting stones off hoses, the 31 to 40 PREEMPT injection sites suddenly make perfect anatomical sense.
They really do.
Right, because you aren't just randomly shooting in the dark or blasting the whole head for no reason.
No, not at all.
You are targeting very specific, well-known anatomical pinch points.
Precisely. Let's look at the anatomy again. The frontalis and the corrugator muscles in the forehead.
The ones you use to raise your eyebrows or scowl.
Right. They directly surround the supraorbital and supratrochlear nerves.
Okay. The temporalis muscle on the side of your head.
The one that flexes when you clench your jaw.
Yes, that one encloses the zygomaticotemporal nerve.
Good.
And in the back of the head, the occipitalis and trapezius muscles are the primary structures that compress the greater occipital nerve.
Okay, so the anatomy maps perfectly to the pain points.
It does. By relaxing these specific heavy lifting muscle groups, you are chemically decompressing the specific peripheral nerves that are most notorious for triggering head pain.
So we are chemically lifting the garden stones off the hoses all over the head.
Exactly.
It makes perfect logical sense on paper. But let's do a reality check here.
Good idea.
We have to look at the actual patient experience. If we are chemically decompressing these nerves, what is the day-to-day reality for a patient undergoing the PREEMPT protocol?
It's a mixed bag, honestly.
Is Botox a magic bullet? Does it just cure them and they go back to a normal life?
The clinical data provides a very sobering reality check.
Yeah. Botox is highly effective for many, and it has changed lives, but it is certainly not a magic bullet.
Let's look at the numbers.
If we break down the data from those massive PREEMPT trials, we see a very nuanced picture. The group receiving the Botox injections saw, on average, a reduction of about 8.4 headache days per month.
Okay, going from 15 or 20 headache days down by 8.4 days. That sounds fantastic. You get a whole week of your life back every month.
It does sound fantastic until you look at the control group.
Oh, the placebo group.
Yes, the placebo group, the patients who were receiving 31 to 40 injections of mere saline water, thinking it might be Botox.
Right. What happened with them?
They saw a reduction of about 6.6 headache days per month.
Wow. Wait, the placebo group got almost 7 days of relief just from the psychological expectation of being treated?
Yes, the placebo effect is real.
That is wild. The placebo effect in pain management is incredibly powerful.
It is a massive factor.
But when you do the math on that, let's see, 8.4 days of relief for Botox minus 6.6 days for the placebo.
Right.
The actual net clinical benefit of the Botox over the placebo is a rather modest 1.5 to 2 additional headache-free days a month.
Exactly. The net therapeutic gain is relatively small.
Just 1 or 2 extra days.
Now, to a patient suffering 20 days a month, an extra 2 days of functioning, of being able to go to work or play with their kids without pain, is highly valuable.
Oh, absolutely. We shouldn't dismiss it.
We shouldn't. But the trials also show that only about 47% of patients achieve a 50% or greater reduction in their headache days.
Which means more than half of the patients going through this grueling protocol do not even cut their headache days in half.
That is correct. Furthermore, it requires significant patience and endurance.
Why? Doesn't it work right away?
No, Botox for migraines does not work immediately. You don't get the injections on Tuesday and wake up cured on Wednesday.
How long does it take?
For a large percentage of patients, it takes 2 to 3 full treatment cycles before they see the maximum clinical benefit.
And the treatment cycle is 12 weeks, right?
Yes, 12 weeks.
So we are talking about waiting 6 to 9 months of getting 40 shots in the head and neck before you even know if it is fully working.
That's the reality for a lot of people.
That is an agonizingly long time to wait when you're in pain more than half the month.
It really is.
And I have to imagine there are risks and side effects to injecting a potent neurotoxin into 40 different sites on your head and neck every few months.
There are absolute risks. Most are localized and transient, but they are very real to the patient experience.
Like what?
It is a drooping of the upper eyelid.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it happens when the toxin diffuses or spreads slightly beyond the intended injection site in the forehead.
And it hits the wrong muscle.
Exactly. It temporarily paralyzes the small muscle that lifts the eyelid.
Yikes. So a patient walks around for weeks or months with one eyelid drooping down.
Which can impair vision and be cosmetically distressing.
Oh, wow. So you might get rid of your headache, but you look like you were half asleep for 2 months?
Exactly. Additionally, around 9% of patients experience neck pain.
Wait, neck pain from a headache treatment?
Ironically, yes. It's caused by the injections into the trapezius and cervical muscles.
How did that work?
By artificially weakening those muscles, other surrounding muscles sometimes have to overcompensate to hold the head up.
Oh, so they cramp up.
Right, leading to severe muscle spasms and neck pain.
That sounds miserable.
And of course, we must mention that all botulinum toxin products carry an FDA black box warning.
A black box warning. That's serious.
Very serious. It's regarding the potential for the toxin to spread distantly from the injection site.
What happens if it spreads?
It can cause severe, life-threatening issues like swallowing or breathing difficulties.
A black box warning is literally the most serious safety alert the FDA can issue.
It is. Now, to be fair, at the specific highly controlled doses used for chronic migraine in the PREEMPT protocol, those severe distant spread events are exceptionally rare.
But the warning exists because the underlying substance is inherently dangerous if misused.
Exactly.
But the biggest limitation of all, which we alluded to with the 12-week cycles, is that it wears off.
It always wears off.
The body eventually metabolizes the toxin, the nerves recover, and the muscle regains its tone.
The muscle tightens right back up.
The heavy stone gets placed right back down onto the Gardy hose, and the pain returns.
Yes.
So the patient is literally tethered to this cycle of indefinite repeat treatments just to maintain whatever baseline relief they've achieved.
That cyclical nature is a massive physical, emotional, and financial burden for patients.
I can't even imagine.
Imagine watching the calendar every day. By week 9 or 10, many patients report the pain creeping back in.
The Botox starts fading.
Right, and they just have to white-knuckle it until their insurance allows them to get their next round of shots at week 12.
It is a grueling way to live.
But there's another, perhaps more tragic limitation detailed in our source material.
What's that?
There is a massive blind spot in how these clinical trials were conducted in the first place.
A blind spot? What do you mean?
Patients with constant, unremitting headaches. People who never, ever have a single headache-free day.
Right.
They are systematically excluded from these clinical trials.
Excluded? Wait. Why on earth would you exclude the people who are suffering the absolute most from a trial about severe headaches?
Because of the strict, rigid way clinical trials are designed and measured.
I don't follow.
Trials measure success by looking at reductions in discrete episodes.
Okay, so like going from 20 to 10 days.
Yes, exactly. The researchers want to see your headache days drop. But if you have a continuous, never-ending headache, you can't demonstrate a reduction in frequency.
Because it never stopped.
Right. You don't have episodes that start and stop. You just have a constant baseline state of pain.
Wow.
Because they don't fit the neat mathematical measurement criteria of the trial, they are excluded from the research entirely.
That is heartbreaking.
This evidence gap means that some of the most severe sufferers are chronically underserved by the standard medical framework simply because their pain doesn't fit a spreadsheet.
So what does this all mean?
It's a tough spot.
What does a patient do if they're caught in this 12-week cycle where their relief starts fading by week 10 and they're just trapped in a clinic chair for the rest of their lives?
Right.
Or worse, what if they fall into that unremitting headache blind spot and standard treatments just aren't moving the needle? Are they just out of luck?
No, they aren't. And this is where the narrative takes a brilliant turn.
Okay, good.
This is where we transition from looking at Botox purely as a therapeutic treatment to looking at it as a profound diagnostic tool.
Diagnostic.
Yes, the very fact that Botox's relief is temporary, that the headache returns the exact moment the muscle regains tone and recompresses the nerve, is a massive flashing neon sign pointing toward a permanent solution.
Right, because if the Botox works, even if it is only for 8 weeks, it is living biological proof that the patient's issue is fundamentally a peripheral nerve-based mechanical problem.
Exactly.
If freezing the muscle stops the pain, then the squeezing muscle is the culprit. We know exactly what the problem is.
It validates the chemical decompression model in that specific individual patient.
That is so cool.
And this brings us to a major divergence in medical methodology. We talked about the PREEMPT protocol being a shotgun approach.
Right, spreading a fixed dose across all the major muscle groups of the head and neck to see what works.
But migraine surgeons use a very different, highly refined approach. They use a targeted nerve mapping approach.
So instead of the shotgun blasting the whole neighborhood, they're using a laser to find the exact house.
Yes. Instead of a diffuse spread, a surgeon wants to know exactly which anatomical corridor is the problem.
How do they do that?
By targeting specific muscle groups one at a time, or listening deeply to the patient's symptom presentation, they create a precise diagnostic map. They can say, okay, when we chemically decompress the greater occipital nerve in the back of the head, the patient's primary symptoms vanish completely.
Meaning that's the spot.
Right.
Yeah.
Therefore, we know the occipital region is the primary area under compressive load. This raises an important question, though. Do patients have to endure months and months of these painful Botox injections, tracking their pain in journals every single day, just to prove to a surgeon that they are a candidate for a more permanent fix?
That is exactly what I was wondering. Because if I'm suffering, I don't want to spend 9 months getting 120 injections just to prove I need the real fix.
Surprisingly, the answer is no.
Really?
And this is a paradigm-shifting piece of data highlighted in our source.
Okay, let's hear it.
There was a landmark study published in 2012 involving 335 patients.
335 patients?
Yes. It proved that detailed clinical symptom mapping is statistically equivalent to Botox diagnostic testing when predicting surgical outcomes.
Let me make sure I understand this clearly.
Sure.
You are saying a highly skilled surgeon can just sit down in a room, listen to the patient describe their pain, map the symptoms clinically based on anatomy, and get the exact same accurate diagnostic blueprint as they would from injecting Botox and waiting 9 months to see what happens.
Exactly. A skilled migraine surgeon can map the pain without ever needing the needle.
That's incredible.
The clinical evaluation, where does the pain start? Where does it travel? What makes it worse? What physical pressure points trigger it? Is just as powerful a predictor for surgical success as a long course of diagnostic Botox.
Which means patients do not have to waste precious time jumping through diagnostic hoops if they're already suffering severely.
Exactly. They can move directly toward the solution.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the climax of this entire medical narrative.
It does.
If we know exactly which nerves are being squeezed by the muscles, and we know that temporarily decompressing them with chemicals works, then the next logical, undeniable step is structural, permanent decompression.
Precisely. We move from treating the symptom to fixing the anatomy.
Right.
This is the realm of peripheral nerve decompression surgery, a field spearheaded by a plastic surgeon named Dr. Bauman Guron.
A plastic surgeon.
Yes, a plastic surgeon.
Which is so incredibly poetic because it brings us right back to Dr. Binder, the dermatologist doing cosmetic wrinkle work in the 90s.
It comes full circle.
It really does. It is the cosmetic and reconstructive world that has consistently cracked the code on this mechanical nerve issue, while traditional neurology was largely focused on brain chemistry.
It is a brilliant convergence of disciplines. Think about it. Plastic and reconstructive surgeons understand the intricate, microscopic anatomy of the face, head, and neck fascia better than almost anyone in medicine.
They live in those tissues.
Exactly. They spend their careers navigating these exact tissues. Dr. Guerin simply applied that anatomical mastery to the problem of neurology and pain.
It's genius.
However, we must be incredibly clear on the clinical pathway here as outlined by the specialty center.
Right, because this isn't for everyone.
Surgery is a major step. It is not the first line of defense. The source explicitly outlines that this surgery is the intended pathway for patients who are failing Botox, failing triptans, and failing CGRP inhibitors.
Right, the absolute heavy hitters of migraine management.
The big guns.
Triptans are the rescue drugs you take when a migraine hits, and CGRP inhibitors are the newer, high-tech monthly injections designed to block those alarm bell chemicals we talked about earlier.
Exactly. So if you have tried the Botox, you've tried the triptans, and you've tried the CGRP inhibitors, and you are still suffering 15 days a month, you are not out of options.
You haven't failed.
No, you haven't. You are actually the prime candidate for this structural fix.
So tell us how this surgery actually works. What is the surgeon physically doing?
It is remarkably straightforward conceptually, though it obviously requires immense surgical skill and precision.
Sir?
It is an outpatient procedure, meaning you go home the same day, performed under general anesthesia.
Okay, so you're totally asleep.
Yes. The surgeon makes small, often hidden incisions, sometimes in the hairline or even through the upper eyelid crease.
Oh, well, the eyelid crease.
Yeah, to access the specific nerve that is being compressed. Then they go in and physically, permanently remove the compressing structures.
So they're literally moving the heavy stone off the garden hose and throwing the stone away so it can never crush the hose again.
Exactly.
What are they actually removing, though?
Depending on the patient's anatomy, the surgeon might remove a small portion of the muscle that is clamping down on the nerve.
Like just cutting a little window out of the muscle.
Basically, they might snip and release tight, fibrous fascial bands that are tethering the nerve.
The chicken wrap.
Right. Or they might use tiny instruments to widen the bony foramina, those bone tunnels, so the nerve has more room to breathe.
Oh, that makes sense.
They physically liberate the nerve. It changes the entire paradigm from temporary chemical management to a permanent structural resolution.
Okay, I have to ask the obvious question here.
Go for it.
If the surgeon cuts out a piece of my corrugator muscle in my forehead to free the nerve, what happens to my face? Do I lose the ability to move my eyebrows? Do I look like I have permanent cosmetic Botox?
It is a great question, and patients ask it all the time.
I bet.
Because these are plastic surgeons, the aesthetic outcome is heavily prioritized. Yes, removing a small piece of the corrugator muscle will weaken the ability to scowl.
Okay.
In fact, many patients experience a slight smoothing of their forehead, very similar to a cosmetic brow lift or Botox.
Oh, so it's a bonus.
It is often considered a pleasant side effect, yeah.
Yeah.
But you do not lose overall facial expression.
That's a relief.
The surrounding muscles compensate, and the focus is purely on relieving the microcompression on the nerve, not paralyzing the whole face.
Got it.
And once that nerve is free, it begins to heal. The chronic inflammation subsides, the firing threshold normalizes, and the alarm bells stop ringing.
And the outcomes documented in the source material for this procedure are absolutely staggering.
They really are.
The document explicitly states that there is an up to 93% success rate for nerve decompression surgery in appropriately selected patients.
Yes.
Up to 93%. For a patient population that has failed the strongest drugs on the market, that has suffered for decades, that number is life-changing.
It is a phenomenal success rate. But that high percentage all comes down to rigorous, meticulous patient selection.
Right. You have to operate on the right people.
Exactly. To ensure they hit that up to 93% success rate, surgeons rely heavily on one final crucial tool, which is diagnostic nerve blocks.
Diagnostic nerve blocks, how do those work?
A diagnostic nerve block is when the doctor injects a simple local anesthetic, like lidocaine or bupivacaine.
Like what a dentist uses.
Very similar to what a dentist uses to numb your mouth. They inject it directly at the specific peripheral nerve trigger sites they mapped out in the clinic.
Okay.
It numbs the nerve completely, but only for a few hours.
Giving the patient a temporary, real-time preview of exactly what permanent surgical relief will feel like.
Right.
If the block works, you know exactly where to cut.
Exactly. If the nerve block immediately eliminates the headache, the surgeon knows with near certainty that they have found the exact structural pinch point.
It confirms the anatomy map.
It does. Tragically, as the source document notes, these simple diagnostic nerve blocks are vastly underutilized as a screening tool in standard neurological practice.
Why is that?
Many patients receive nerve blocks from pain clinics just for a few hours of temporary relief, but they are never, ever told that a positive response actually means they might be a prime candidate for permanent surgery.
It is like they are handed a map to buried treasure, but no one ever tells them what the map is for.
Exactly.
They just admire the map, enjoy the few hours of relief, and put it back in their pocket to suffer again tomorrow.
It's a huge missed opportunity in patient care.
Well, what an incredible journey this has been today. We started in a 1990s Beverly Hills dermatology clinic looking at a totally accidental cure for forehead wrinkles.
We did.
And we followed that scientific thread all the way to a profound, paradigm-shifting realization. For a massive subset of sufferers, chronic migraines are not just invisible, systemic chemical imbalances.
No, they aren't.
They are tangible mechanical compression problems, a physical squeezing of the
A
nerves.
structural issue.
And this journey culminates in an up to 93% successful surgical fix for the patients who have exhausted their medical options, failing Botox, triptans, and CGRP inhibitors.
It truly is a testament to the importance of observation in medicine and to the willingness of doctors to cross strict disciplinary boundaries.
Yeah.
From dermatology to neurology to plastic surgery,
To find a cure.
to find a structural cure for a condition that has robbed so many millions of people of their quality of life.
Absolutely. It makes you realize how interconnected everything is.